morning, everybody. It is Wednesday. August the 9th, 2023. It is Command Briefing. I'm your host, Jared A. Chambers. Thank you, everyone, for joining and getting to Hump Day. It's the middle of the week. A lot of things that we thought might have happened this week have not happened yet. We're still waiting on news out of Georgia as far as that potential fourth indictment from Fulton County. That is looking more and more like that is maybe a couple or 3 weeks off. Apparently still people being brought in to that grand jury, still testifying. So more to come on that. But big breaking story of the week, and I didn't expect this. I'm always very honest with people who follow me on Twitter, people who listen to me here. Just because a source is conservative doesn't mean that they get automatic credibility with me. Some sources have proven themselves better over time, and then there's always the sensationalism that's always inherent to the media business. In my point of view, personal point of view, Gateway Pundit has at times been a mixed bag. But they seem to have a really solid story breaking this week with a police investigation going back to election 2020 and the fake registrations of voters being dumped by the hundreds, by the thousands, being noticed, having officials look at this and say, hey, we have a problem here. We have problems with signatures not matching, the handwriting on all of the applications being the same, addresses being non-existent or incorrect. Big problems that brought the police to investigate. And now we are seeing for the first time that actual police report and what they found, connections to Democrat Party, dark money involved. Very solid story, and certainly more to come. To bring some color to this, I wanted to invite a special guest tonight. He's been a longtime friend of mine. We met through Twitter. I have joined his podcast on a couple of occasions, and we've had a good time there. And I wanted to return the favor. My friend, the Mighty Humanzee, who hails from the state of Michigan. And I wanted to get some better context around what is going on with Michigan elections, the players involved, any additional context that he might be able to bring us around this story. How you doing tonight, Z?
Brother Jared, thank you for having me on. You know, as we were saying in the warm-up, we did a podcast together last year called the Georgia-Michigan Apology Tour. Mm-hmm. It was sort of like a Bing Crosby, Bob Hope tongue-in-cheek look at how Georgia and Michigan kind of screwed the nation. And we were laughing about it then, and we were sort of going, you know, what do we say? Because Georgia and Michigan, you've got indictments coming in Georgia in 3 weeks. You guys are getting caught up with us in terms of controversy because in Michigan, it turns out we're finding ballots all over the place. We're finding hidden investigations. And yet at the same time, we have indictments that we are assured are not of a political warfare type retribution style, Stasi state. Thank you for having me on. There's just lots to talk about. And just when you thought it was quiet here in Michigan, that ain't the case. So maybe that's why I live here. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad at least. I mean, you can be thankful that you didn't put yourself forward to be a alternate elector in election 2020, or you would be indicted right now, correct?
That's correct. And so what has happened is that Dana Nessel, who is the Attorney General for the state of Michigan. This is her second term. She indicted Michonne Maddock and other key figures from the Republican Party who were alternate electors who formed documentation as alternate electors. And so the argument is, okay, are they knowingly lying, and are they committing fraud by submitting this paperwork, which they submitted directly to Congress? That's really the issue there. The amazing thing is that I believe there's 7 counts brought against each individual with a jail term total for, so if I have 7 counts brought against me, I potentially am serving 69 years in prison. Now, the majority of the people are accused are senior citizens. So this is complete retribution. And the other series of indictments that have been issued against Dana has issued in the past month, timed specifically with the Trump indictments. Enough. Imagine that, right? Her former opponent, Matt DePerno, has also been indicted in this scheme where somehow he tampered with voting machines, which seems rather odd because the circumstance is that he was able to convince county clerks or someone to bring a few voting machines to a hotel in Oakland County. Oakland County district attorney refused to take this case, so she had to Dana Nessel had to shop around the state to get a DA to take this case on. Amazingly, hey, reform investigation. That's just a few weeks. That's just a few weeks before election, etc. The timing here is all very, very suspicious. So, Dana
they can always, at the end of the day, they can find some DA in some county and some court who will go along with them, right? I mean, and this is one of the dangers, and I talk about it a lot on Twitter, and I talk about it on my show. This idea of red states and blue states has absolutely slaughtered the right, because we look to having boundaries of relative safety in what we think of as red states. And more we see that safety isn't there because it's really urban versus rural and ruling class against country class. So it doesn't matter if you live in Michigan, which during 2020, and correct me if I'm wrong, during election 2020, you had a Republican state legislature, did you not?
Yes, we had a Republican state legislator, that is House and Senate, for over 40 years in 2020. We lost that in 2022. I became a precinct delegate and campaigned for the people who are indicted. So for Matt DePerno, I campaigned for Matt DePerno. I campaigned for Christina Caramo, who's the current chair of the Michigan GOP. And it's just interesting as an outsider to witness the reluctance of establishment Republicans to talk about election fraud. And as we get into further details tonight, we'll see there's very, very clear evidence. Evidence being, I see something, I'm going to testify to something. We've had, close to 200 people fill out affidavits. You don't fill out an affidavit thinking, oh, my bad, sorry. No, that's a felony if you knowingly file a false affidavit. So people were very, very serious about what they saw in 2020. And in 2022, the Republicans, I thought that this was all low-hanging fruit to go after this, refused to acknowledge the issue. The most that we got was, well, maybe with the ballots, there's a possibility with the absentee ballots, but no, nothing with Dominion machines. There's all the networks were secured, and it was just quite amazing how they shied away from that, and that's why we lost. That's why we got completely shellacked in 2020.
Well, I mean, we've been left to wonder the same thing here too, right? About these affidavits. I mean, we had tons of affidavits from the 2020 election. People, again, under penalty of perjury, saying, I observed this happen in the counting of votes. I observed this impropriety. And, my question has been, where did those go? But I think as you see some of these, retribution type indictments handed down, how many people may have just simply been waved off of pushing the issue because they're now afraid of somebody coming after them.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, look at it this way. We talked about penalty of perjury. These people were serious. I saw what I saw. But how many times does somebody have to come to you and say, no, you didn't see that? Understand? Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Before you get the idea that, hey, if you continue this, I mean, we'll let it go for now. But if you press the issue, if you go to the media, if you continue to talk about it, we're going to say, essentially what they've done to Trump, you are guilty until proven innocent.
Yes.
You can't show that we're guilty because we've destroyed the evidence, and the only evidence now is your word. So you're guilty. Yes. Because we're the state. We have the official narrative. We're in charge. If we say it didn't happen, by God, it didn't. And so now we can bring you up on charges.
Well, to bring us to this issue that Gateway Pundit broke, and Patty McMurray, who's done some marvelous work here in Michigan. We're talking about evidence. Well, the state police has been involved with this. What happened is that in October of 2020, at the Muskegon County Clerk's office, the county clerk, whose name is who is Ann Meesh, she noted, hey, someone came to the office, an African-American lady, according to the investigation details that Patty was able to obtain via FOIA. So this is not made up. She has the receipt. She has the redacted report. The county clerk became alarmed because someone was trying to drop off within one day between 8 and 10,000 ballots. That's a lot of boxes. That's not just, here you go. Here's a stack of envelopes. So someone showed up, obviously with a vehicle full of these, and wanted to drop these off. That's on day one. The second day, this person returned with 2,500 additional I said ballots. I misspoke. These are registrations. So the police were contacted. The state police and Dana Nessel, Attorney General's office, was also contacted. So we had First Lieutenant Mike Anderson was contacted by Tom Fabus, Chief of Investigations for Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel. So this has legs. So in other words, in 2020, we were told there's no evidence. Well, no, there is evidence. The police have this evidence. The state police got involved. Now, it is the conjecture is, and Patty has not been able to confirm all of the cities. She says she has varying sources that she's compiling. They represent the cities in their entirety fairly soon. But these are major cities that are involved. Flint, Michigan, Grand Rapids, which used to be it's Gerald Ford territory, so it used to be Country Club Republican, and then the city of Southfield, which is a suburb of Detroit. So you've got three major areas that we know of so far where this activity has occurred. So what happened in this investigation? And they had found that this person was being paid by a company called GBI, and GBI had offices throughout the state. So this is at a state level. This is no longer a county level. Now, what's important to remember here is that this is October 2020. Okay, we had the election. We had the pizza boxes covering up the windows in Detroit. We had the lawsuit over the Dominion voting machines in Antrim County. Of all this kerfuffle, and we had over 200 people provide affidavits here about stolen election. Okay, you had Dana Nessels and Jocelyn Benson. Jocelyn Benson is the Secretary of State. They issued a report saying, hey, we had over 250 audits. There is no evidence, which is actually a lie because the police investigation is still open. So if I were to contact the Michigan State Police, they would say, this is an ongoing investigation. We cannot provide details. Okay, now I have to do what Patty did and obtain FOIAs to get the rest of this. Now, this also calls into question the capability of Barr under Trump at DOJ, because Barr said, "Hey, there's no evidence." Well, because this GBI company has operated over 70 operations in several states, this is now an FBI matter, and the FBI indeed was contacted. And this is what Patty has revealed through her research with this story. So Barr either didn't know what was going on, which is a bad thing, kind of stupid, kind of dumb, or he knew and he lied. So, this is for people making these statements that it's all secure, nothing to see here. This sort of flies in the face of that. And I think the other thing is that...
Well, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought.
Absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're going to take a quick break, and I want to come back to that thought, because rolling in Barr and this idea that there's no evidence, when in fact we know that there's evidence, is a key point. So we're going to be right back in just a moment, folks. Stand by with us. Folks, we're back. Thanks for hanging in through the break. If you're joining, just a reminder again, we're talking with the Mighty Humanzee, friend of mine from Michigan. You can find him on Twitter, by the way, at HZardoz. Worth a follow. And again, and we'll hit more on this before we close out with Z tonight. He does his own podcast show as well that you may be interested in. Always worth a listen to get some key inside information. But
thank you very much.
Yeah, right before the break, Z, we were talking about this is an ongoing investigation in Michigan. It's not closed. At some point, the FBI was brought into this. And this does bring up the issue of Barr when he's one of the people saying that we have no evidence of any kind of fraud worth investigating and didn't investigate. We know that it exists. We can see it in real time. But isn't it interesting, too, who was it who was outlining these very types of risks in around this time in 2020, 3 years ago, summer? Bill Barr actually made a beautiful case for why this type of mail-in voting is so ripe for fraud.
Yeah.
So interesting question on what his motivations are. I'm going to let you kind of get back into where you were going with where the investigation is and some of the key points about that.
Well, one of the interesting details here is that this is operation run out of Tennessee. This is the company is GBI, but is a PAC called Black PAC. They were paid $11.2 million. So Black PAC is political action group had paid GBI, $1.2 million in 2020 to register voters. So this has been happening across state lines. So this is very, the FBI very clearly should be involved with this. And I want to get back to a point that you just made about Barr and Barr saying, hey, mail-in ballots kind of makes things easy for cheating to occur. And I just want to bring up just a couple key statistics here for the 2020 election in Michigan, which really should make people's hackles rise. Mm-hmm. So we had 3.3 million absentee ballots in 2020. The courts scolded Secretary of State Benson at the time for sending out these absentee ballots without request. So in other words, just blanket, get 3.3 million, send them out to everybody because everyone's going to be sick and dying, but they want to vote before they pass away from COVID. We had over 800,000 fraudulent registrations that, hey, we got to do something with. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the absentee ballots themselves, out of 3.3 million used in 2020 who were filed right in the election, only 15,000 were rejected. So that is less than 0.5% rejection rate. So Barr was right, Barr, and so we had in Michigan, we had 8.1 million registered voters, but only 7.5 were eligible to vote.
Yeah.
And those voter rolls have not been purged. So these are issuances from courts.
Yes.
Against the Secretary of State. This is evidence. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else is not evidence. I mean, I don't know you can't not call it evidence. I don't know what would be called evidence. I mean, these are courts saying this. And the interesting thing is this is so huge. The Republicans in my state did nothing at all. There was a blanket statement that they made in terms of, safe and secure elections. This flies in the face of a lawsuit in Antrim County by Matt DePerno. Matt DePerno contended that the Dominion machines were responsible for throwing 3,000 votes from Trump to Biden. There was tampering. Mm-hmm. And in this course of this lawsuit, they were able to win an independent audit, and they audited the computer network and the computers themselves that were used as the central hub for collecting, collating, and communicating the votes. Okay, there were over 18 security violations and anomalies that were found. One being logging was turned off, meaning any events in terms of adding devices to the main computer server, to the main server. The logging, those were turned off for that day. The most important day out of the 4 years is election day. The logging system's turned off.
Yeah.
There was a password that was known amongst all the clerks. So any one of the clerk's offices would go up, interact with his computer, get out numbers because the database wasn't secured either. So I could go up to this computer, take my cell phone and say, Biden, Trump is down 50 votes. Okay, ballot, bring in more absentee ballots.
There's a connection there on situation. Yeah, there's a connection there on the data side where they know in real time what they have to make up.
Exactly.
Which is key to being able to do this. But
I wanted to finish one thought there before we go on there. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Jocelyn Benson's own auditor, she requested an audit. He confirmed that these 18 items are open, that the machine would have failed audit and should not have been used. Mm-hmm. But through waving hands, saying, they were able to do a hand count. They fixed the issue with Trump, gave Trump his votes, wiped the hands. Okay, we're all good here, and it went away. Which, now that these registrations come up, the question is, I got the voter rolls all stacked, ready to go. How are you going to tell? What paper comes in? You can't.
You can't. And I think it's left a lot of people who understand intuitively the election fraud case, but don't necessarily get into the details in the way that you and I have. You look at the Dominion stuff, for example, and they look at these breaches of security and say, well, this obviously was used to switch votes in the machine, which frankly may or may not be true. We don't know because that's the point of what they did to the machines. They opened them up where they're supposed to be closed systems. It's no longer where it is under control in the way that it should have been, where the data is protected the way that it should have been. is it the case that votes were actually changed in these machines, or was it simply a matter of access like we talked about? So
Yeah.
now we know what's happening, so we see where and how many votes that we have to make up.
Yep.
But to me, David, and you know, you might comment on this as well, what I'm seeing as I have made the voter fraud case across the last 2.5 years is some people won't hear it, and it's like la la la. I've got my fingers in my ears. With the stuff like, you know, there's no proof. You know, I mean, that's the trope that they always fall back upon, and they make it sound like you are trying to throw out legitimate votes. They make it sound like this mail-in balloting.
Yeah.
Well, of course we got more votes than ever because we made it the way voting should be. We made it easy, and we got these people registered, and we helped them get their ballots returned in a timely way. And shouldn't you want that? You know, they make it sound like a good thing.
Yeah.
When in fact, the very problem is we don't know if signatures match in many cases. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. They refuse to show us. You know, they could prove us all wrong, by the way. Something we talked about in advance of the show. If they wanted to make a case and prove us all wrong, they could show us this was a legitimate voter with a legitimate signature on this ballot. They refuse to provide us that kind of information. And that really is, to me, the heart of the fraud case. I'm not in a position to say which signatures matched and which didn't, and which voter registrations were real and which were not. What I know for a fact is, David, and this was true in Georgia, and I'm sure it was true in Michigan, is that the laws that the state legislature had in place around protocol, security for the machines, around registration processes, around absentee ballot processes, these were in place so that you don't have questions about whether the ballots are legitimate. And so if you don't follow those laws, you should by default consider any ballot that came in via those means that didn't follow the process and the protocol to be illegitimate and throw them out. Yep. Correct?
Exactly. And again, Benson's auditor stated the system fails, wouldn't pass an audit. But the Republicans chose to go with, hey, this is safe and secure for reasons of a conjecture that I think will be over the next coming months we'll figure out soon. But I think for tonight we just won't have time to dive into. But it's like this. It's like, you know, you go to your bank account, right? And you notice your bank account is down $3,000. Okay. You call in and say, oh, I'm down $3,000. What the hell's going on here? And all of a sudden the money reappears. Okay. All right. What happened? Oh, we can't tell you that. But, you know, we had some problems with security here but it's all okay. Well, no, you would call an auditor and have that bank audited because it you know, that's your money. What's happening behind the scenes with figure switching and things like that? And are you, you know, as we know from Sarbanes-Oxley and other FTC laws, hey, you've got to maintain integrity of these systems. And when you don't, there's heavy fines. People go to jail. They lose their jobs. You know, and amazingly, for the most important election of the country, for the country, these were not followed. That's the one approach with asking the non-believers, whether or not they come to the table and consider that, I don't know. But Benson's own auditor, in his own words, states about the lack of security around these systems, which begs many questions. And you can go find other experts now who would say, yeah, that thing is wide open. You could do a 2,000 mules. You had the same expert in 2022 who this gentleman belongs, his last name is Holderman, professor from U of M. He belongs to CISA, which is the Department of Defense Board for Cybersecurity. In April 2022, He's out there saying, "Oh, these systems are all open. We have to be worried about the Russians." So what is it? In 2022, systems are open, but in 2020, the same open systems are fine. I mean, there's many ways, but there's many ways to argue to maybe get some people to listen. Whether it is the in your face, oh my God, I'm sorry, I was so wrong. Whether it's that moment, I don't think we're quite there. This pretty much seems so, though. If they can tie these cities together, 10,000 registration in Muskegon. Muskegon County has 170,000 people, so that's not quite 10% of the county. But as we all know, the margin by which Trump lost is very, very small. So you can pick these up here and there. That's the whole point. You can hide these with inappropriate registrations.
Yeah. Well, when we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about that in terms of some of the logistics of going out to these different cities within Michigan and within these different states to go register people and what that looks like, and whether anybody has actually thought about the plausibility of some of the outcomes of that in terms of the numbers, and also how it does make an interesting network to conduct what is a wider scale fraud operation. Yeah. But hang in, everybody. We're going to take another quick ad break, and we'll be back after this. Everybody, thank you for hanging in there through the break. And we're back with the Mighty Humanzee from Michigan, talking about election 2020, voter fraud, the blockbuster bombshell Gateway Pundit story this week about the October 2020 investigation into ballot applications and fraudulent ballot applications, an investigation which is still very much open, and also continues on the federal level, was brought to the attention of the FBI because the organization involved, GBI Strategies, operating out of Tennessee and operating in multiple states, and also a recipient of Democrat PAC money to go out and register voters. David, the interesting thing to me about some of this is I'm looking at it from just a business perspective, right? Like, okay, I have this money, PAC money, that's used for political operations. That's understood. And it is in my interest to go out and get as many people registered on my team as possible and get those people out to vote. On the face of that, it's a legitimate operation, right?
Well, certainly.
Both sides should want to do that.
Exactly.
Here's my question when we look at this, and I don't know if anyone's taken a hard look at this. Depending on the people that you hire for this and how you vet them, if I go into an inner city, an urban area, and I tell people, who aren't making anything, hey, I'll pay you $1,150 a week, which I think is the amount that was mentioned here. Give it to you on a prepaid card, doesn't even have to go through, you don't have to have a bank account. In other words, I mean, it kind of tells you the people that they're hiring, right? Yep. And I tell you, hey, I want you to go out and get me as many Democrat registrations as possible. Doesn't anyone think, hey, I don't have to order this this person to commit fraud. I just have given them the incentive and knew the kind of person that I hired and looked the other way. In that sense, giving myself, arm's length plausible deniability, right?
Right. It's interesting. We had a candidate here, Rick Perry, who was the front runner for the Republicans, who was disqualified because his petition had signatures, multiple signatures in the same handwriting. Mm-hmm. And so they did a sampling. Based on a sampling, the Board of Electors ignored the law. Law states you have to validate every single signature you get in. So that means the ones that don't match, you toss out. You don't go, well, hey, you have 0.725% on this one page of false signatures, therefore we're disqualifying everything. Perry lost in court, sadly, with great irony. Right?
Yeah,
with great irony. We've had all these registrations here. There's a couple examples. Obviously here the handwriting, and so County Clerk Misch recognized that, hey, across these forms the handwriting is the same. Mm-hmm. Right there's the red flag.
It's easier to sit there and fill out forms than it is to go out and
exactly
do the work. Yeah.
And this is not the case where, okay, I went to Southfield and I filled out Southfield and the zip code for people and then just have them sign a signature. No, these are addresses where you're supposed to receive your registration papers. And when you go receive your registration, see, this is step one. Registration 2, you get your registration ballot that corresponds with these addresses, supposedly with a signature. That's sent in, and that's your chain of custody proving that you voted. Well, many of these signatures were at a school or an address that just did not exist. Phone numbers, just outright fraudulent, faulty. So yes, you could say, well, you just paid people and darn it, you got the people who are available during the day and most good people have jobs. So that's the group you got to pull from.
Well,
but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to make sure that people understand this point because you alluded to it and I don't want to jump past it too quickly.
Okay.
If you do a ballot application, a registration, either one of those, using a false address, obviously that person is never actually going to get a ballot to vote with. In other words, it is not just a matter of taking, somebody who maybe should not be voting because of their status or where they live or something like that. To introduce fake ballots into the system later, plausibly, you have to have it somewhat reflect the number of registrations that exist in the state.
Exactly.
In other words, if we decide to dump in 500,000 fake ballots and we didn't do the advance work of making sure that there's a set number of registered voters where this total's going to make sense later, we've only done half the job, right?
That's right.
So if we're going to manufacture ballots, it has to make sense. And the way to do that is to come up with these fraudulent registrations in the first place.
Right. And then later on, in Georgia, they couldn't produce a lot of these absentee ballots, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And so, okay, well, how do I know that 1313 Mockingbird Lane, has the Mighty Humanzee there? You don't. But, I've got this ballot here. The machine couldn't read it or there's something wrong with it. And a lot of times they do a provisional ballot where they're rewriting for the person because they say there's a signature. There's so many steps here now that we've introduced that make this amazingly difficult to maintain chain of custody. And I'm being kind saying that.
Yeah.
That's the system, and they were, and I have friends in the western side of the state. And she received 2 registrations at her house, one for her husband, one for her, and then a third in her maiden name at her house. And then she received a registration for her at her parents' house in her married name and her, so this is multiple things. These are out there. Okay, I sent out 800,000. We have new people we think 800,000 are going to register. I sent them out. Great. Check the box. Okay, I've got back in 800,000. Yay! It all trues up. This is great accounting system. Okay, again, you're loading this up now that you've got swaths, and maybe you don't need 800,000. Maybe you just need 60,000 for a major city, or maybe 10,000. Muskegon, the city of Muskegon itself is not all that large, so it's these pockets. Right. And so you can easily spread these anomalies and sort of smooth out this pattern because, okay, I'm going to get 20,000 from Grand Rapids. I'm going to get 10,000 from Muskegon. And oh my gosh, record voting people, 10,000 people came out and voted more than 2 years ago. So it's the process. I think it's clear to see that this process it's the setup. The registration's the setup.
Yes.
Now you do what you want later on because it all trues up, right? 500 extra registrations, 500 extra ballots. Gives you a lot of wiggle room,
It does. And when we talk about election integrity, and particularly the GOP establishment has done this. I know it's true in Georgia with people like Raffensperger or even Governor Kemp, who was in the Secretary of State role before Raffensperger. There's always the talk about the voter rolls themselves and, getting illegitimate registrations out of there, whether those people have moved, whether they're felons, whether they're fraudulent in some other way, or whether it's just simply outdated information that we need to purge from the system. A lot of focus goes in on that. But it seems to me that there's very little focus, again, on this concept of who is allowed to go out and solicit registrations. Right. Should those people be subject to some sort of vetting and qualification? If you're going to pay people to do that, shouldn't we know who they are in some regard? And also, it's the old, and this, Z, we've talked about it many times. My initial training in school was of an engineering background. I know you're a tech guy also. Isn't part of the vetting that we do in problem solving in technology and engineering is just that, does the number make sense? Forget going through all of the math. When I conduct a math problem, does the number, the units, everything make sense from a smell test perspective? And that's what I noticed first. When you talk about bringing in, one person bringing in wasn't it 8 to 10,000 registrations?
10,000. Yep.
Like, did anyone at any point say, hey, let's give the benefit of the doubt and say that this person was a real hustler and actually registered 8 to 10,000 people who were not registered before? Let's just think about the logistics of how long it would have taken one person to do that and whether that number even is plausible and makes sense. Doesn't that seem to be sort of missing here too? That the numbers are just outrageous?
It really does. And I would have asked her to write a couple sentences too, to see if her handwriting matched the ballots, just for some fun, write this sentence for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the point of it. I mean, some of this, yes, we need some real investigations into this. And some of it, obviously, for a long time, I have to think, people have just been simply looking the other way because I don't want to know.
Right. And if you think about this, 10,000 in Muskegon. So I'm just rough guerrilla math here, 170,000 in the county. You're what, 7 or 8% of the county population in fraudulent registrations. Mm-hmm. That's one county. You think people go, hey, is this going on elsewhere? Should we really open this up? And given that this is PAC money involved and this is going on in 20 states, and of course hindsight's 2020, but that's why you open the investigation. It's called Connect the Dots, right? What are the obvious things? Oh, wait, this is PAC. Oh, wait, this guy's in Tennessee. Okay, get the FBI. Oh, gee. Oh, well, wait a second. 10,000 here. Now we got these others. Oh, we have 5,000. And just you would think that would again, blaming the Republicans, which I'm doing a lot lately. Sorry.
Yes.
Republicans should have said something, but Benson and Nessel said nothing. And as you said before, Jared, they had an opportunity to tell us, shut up and go, hey, look, those 10,000 things, they weren't registered. We went to every single county. We checked. We found that, all right, we found this group. We got them. They're now indicted and they're committing fraud, which is, hey, when you're lying with these signatures, that's fraud. That's across state lines. This is serious, but we nipped in the bud. Here's what happens here. None of that. None at all. And that's a big bust too, that you think someone want to feather in the cap, go say, hey, look what I stopped for you. I saved the votes. Michigan, I gave you integrity for your elections because I stopped the fraud from Tennessee and the woman who could write amazingly 10,000 signatures in an hour.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why this issue is so important to me, and it's personal for me. Here in Georgia, we had our gubernatorial and Secretary of State elections fall on off years from presidential. So 2022, we had a chance to look at what Kemp and his role was in election integrity and look at Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, and what his role was in election integrity. And there was this expectation amongst a lot of us that those guys really screwed themselves in 2020 because they pissed off votes that they really needed. Yeah. Now, two things happened. One, well, I'll say three things. So Kemp, although he did a horrible job on election 2020, he did earn grateful votes. And it's funny, when you imprison people falsely and then you let them out, they thank you, even though you shouldn't have put them in prison in the first place.
Right.
Kemp, like many other governors during COVID, we were imprisoned, but he let us out on an early release in Georgia. And so a lot of people were really grateful for that. That had a profound effect on his reelection, I think. Also, the fact that he was running, this is the second factor, against Stacey Abrams, which was just a non-starter. I mean, really scary, hardcore Marxist. We took the medicine in reelecting Kemp. It was not something we wanted to do. He just simply had the best chance of beating Stacey Abrams, which he did. I hate it. I still have heartburn about it, but whatever. Brad Raffensperger, I think a lot of us thought we could really get rid of because he, more than any other official, was responsible for what happened in 2020. But also, he has been so belligerent towards Trump voters and that section of the right, and so dismissive. And I thought for sure he was going to get canned. But look what happened in Georgia, and this made national headlines in the meantime.
Yeah.
He was working with the legislature to pass so-called voter integrity laws, election integrity laws. It was pissing off all of the right people. It was, this is why, like, Atlanta, the Braves Stadium, lost the MLB All-Star Game. This is why Coca-Cola lost its collective crap over what was happening, because this was supposed to be, as Joe Biden called it, Jim Crow 2.0.
Right.
Now, it was none of those things, but Democrats set up Brad Raffensperger so beautifully to get reelected because they made him the anti-Stacey Abrams boogeyman. Yeah. When all he did, the rule changes were, some of them were okay, that I don't object to them, but they weren't principal to how election 2020 was stolen either. But he was set up so nicely, the enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing, and he cruises to re-election. It's crazy.
Yeah.
we're going to, I need to step back and take one last break so that we can come back to our last segment here. Right. Last segment, we'll tie up the loose ends. And when we come back to Z, talk a little bit where folks can find you out there in the social media sphere.
Outstanding.
All right. Hang on, everyone. We'll be right back. Everyone, you're listening to Command Briefing, and we're coming in on the last segment of the hour here, talking to the Mighty Humanzee, a friend of mine from Michigan, and really laying out election 2020 and the bombshell report this week from Gateway Pundit and the known existence of fraud in election 2020. Z, I mean, you've done such a great job giving context to this story here. I really appreciate it. We have about 8 minutes left in the show here. I want to do a couple of things. Top, any loose ends, any other points that you wanted to make about this bombshell story this week. Plus, I just wanted to give you a chance too. Again, you're not just a observer of what's going on. You've become active in Michigan politics at some level, and you're also doing your own podcast out there. I just want to give you a chance to kind of talk about the things that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I think the thing is that I tell people that Michigan, and particularly the red states, Michigan may be your future. You know, now Georgia obviously is a red state, and with everything that went on there, particularly again not being able to produce absentee ballots, we're not in Oz anymore. You know, we're in Mordor. You know, we're in some place kind of dank and dark, and it ain't good. And we have to look at this, as we were saying during the warm-up, we can't look at this with 2018 eyes. We can't really look at this at 2020 with 2020 eyes, because we have political activism by law enforcement agencies coordinated. We've got Michigan coordinating its indictments with Trump indictments. That happened from last year, where they had J6 indictment of after Rick Perry had been removed from the race. Ryan Kelly was considered a front runner, and he was arrested for being on or near Congress at the mall for January 6th. And so all of these are timed together. And we had our governor. There was supposedly a plot to kidnap her. However, there are more FBI agents involved in the plot than there were actually, kidnappers. But oh well, there's 2 trials with that. That still hasn't been settled. But we've got people who are very comfortable working with federal law enforcement agencies to achieve their political ends. Mm-hmm. This is happening in all sorts of states.
Yes.
The Republicans they're no longer threatened by not having the votes, right? Mm-hmm. They're threatened by not getting their deals and their money. I'm just going to state that plainly, and hopefully I can come back on. We can flesh that out in another session. But
yeah,
I think those who we thought we would protect and have an interest in exposing this, and I found this as a precinct delegate. Mm-hmm. Those who you would think would have interest, and it's low hanging fruit, man. It's every day. Hey, pizza boxes over the windows at TCF at Cobo Center for the counting. Hey, and they say it's all fun. I mean, we had a candidate for Secretary of State who ran on that platform effectively, but had the rug pulled out from under her every step of the way by the establishment. It was sad.
Yeah.
So I really think that this is not just a Michigan issue. This is a United States issue. You see what happened in Arizona with Kari Lake, and you see that Judge Thomas was really the only dissenter when they decided not to even hear the case between the Texas lawsuit. This is serious, and this is not there's evidence. There's people who come forth who are willing to risk the charge of felony to talk about this. It warrants us. It doesn't warrant. We're never going to have another free election again if they continue to do this.
Yeah.
Now,
are you still a precinct delegate? Or are you still?
Yes, I am. I'm still a precinct delegate. Yeah.
Okay.
Bitter pill. Finding out what it's all about, and oh my God, because I'm quite honest with people. A lot of these people don't deserve the help to get elected.
Well, because they don't. As someone who's involved in a political role, though, as a precinct delegate, do you find like this lawfare against even people like these alternate states of electors makes it harder to find people who want to be involved in the process, thinking I could be doing something that I just think of as, hey, this is common sense. We're going to follow through a procedure, and now I have a felony indictment.
Right.
Are you finding that people are more inclined to be involved or less inclined?
As a chilling effect. Think of it this way. You got to go out and talk to people to convince to vote for the Republicans after all this is going on.
Yeah.
After the former chair is indicted, right? Mm-hmm. And it's wow. And just from the standpoint too of here in Michigan, they did not release funds to the gubernatorial candidate for advertising until the middle of October.
Yeah. And
it's just like, we don't want to win. Is that what we're doing today? We decided we didn't want to win because we're not going to release. I mean, that there are several signs there that make things very I can't say discouraging. It just makes it prohibitive.
Yeah.
And that's putting it nicely.
Yeah. So Z, give me a 90-second rundown here on where folks can find you and a little bit about what you're doing out there.
Well, we run, I'm very lucky to work with some very, very talented individuals. We have two channels. So primarily you can find me on Rumble. So rumble.com/Behind Enemy Lines podcast, all one word. That is a live stream every Wednesday at noon. And then rumble.com/Ozfest. This is where we do deep dive into issues, documentaries. I work with several marvelous people there. We have a current documentary now called Severed Conscience. If you go direct your browser to severedconscience.com, it'll bring you to the homepage. This studies the effects of artificial intelligence, blue screen effect on sleep cycles, and social media addiction. It's a pretty hefty topic. We worked long and hard on that. That's our current documentary. And then I'm on Twitter at HZardoz. That's HZARDOZ. The Mighty Humanzee, I get kicked off. So I had to get back on. So, I'm no longer the body rage machine that I used to be. Because one of the things is just realizing that focusing energies and things like that is very important. But that's where you can find us. And we also have a website, studiohumanzee.com. That's HUMANZEE, studiohumanzee.com, where we have over 80 articles, 45 show notes. We've had 45 episodes of Behind Enemy Lines. Lots of stuff, lots of content.
Cool. Yeah, I encourage people to go out and check out all of it. I particularly like the stuff at Studio Humanzee. I like some of your written deep dives into things.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
I think you do a great job with those. Appreciate you being here, Z. This has been a good show. We'll have you back again. I mean, there's other topics I'd like to dive into that I know you personally that you have some affinity for, but this was something that I think people needed to hear in the mission of this show, which is to give context to the news today. So my appreciation to the Mighty Humanzee for being here. This has been Command Briefing. I'm your host, Jared A. Chambers. Find me on Twitter at C4CEO. And we'll see you back here again tomorrow night. Thanks for listening.